order the August 21st, 2019 Urban Renewal Commission meeting. Will you do the roll call, please?
Commissioner Denise McGriff.
Present.
Commissioner Rocky Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Steve Van Haverby.
Here.
Commissioner Dan Holliday.
Here.
Commissioner Rachel Lau Smith. Here. Commissioner Mike Mitchell.
Here.
Chair Frank O'Donnell.
Here. Before proceeding, do we have any citizen comments? Anyone present want to make a comment? Hearing none, we'll move on to general business. Item 4A, 19-478. It's amendment number 1 to the disposition and development agreement with the Cove LLC. Mr. Conkle, please summarize, please.
Thank you. So tonight I'm here to present the proposed amendment number 1 to the disposition and development agreement for the Cove LLC and the Urban Renewal Commission for Oregon City. I had a conversation with David Mooney, who represents the Cove LLC. He wanted me to pass along that unfortunately I cannot change my schedule as to be present at your forthcoming Urban Renewal Commission meeting. However, I'm excited to come down in the near future and give the URC an update on the progress. I look forward to moving the project forward and appreciate the time extension being considered. It will allow for the final preconditions to be concluded. Section 3.1 of the disposition and development agreement states that satisfaction or waiver of the preconditions described in 3.2 must be satisfied or waived by both parties within 270 days of the effective date of the agreement. If all preconditions are not satisfied within the 270 days, then either party may terminate this agreement by written notice to the other party, which notice shall be effective 20 days after delivery unless the preconditions are satisfied or waived during such 20-day period, provided, however, that a party may not terminate that agreement for failure of a precondition if that party is responsible for the delay in satisfying the precondition, unless that precondition remains unsatisfied the number of days or delay added to the 270-day period. If all the preconditions are satisfied or waived by both parties as provided herein, the parties shall proceed with their respective obligations set forth in the agreement. So that's the requirements of the preconditions in section 3.1. 7 of the 11 preconditions have been met. The outstanding preconditions that have not been met are 3.2.3. Developers shall have submitted the land use approval application to the city. This is one of those where we run into, they've submitted, the Urban Renewal Commission has approved their general land use, essentially their master plan. So that dealt with all of the site grading, the natural resource overlay district, the balanced cut and fill in the floodplain. So the commission approved that. That's been submitted to planning. That's already been approved. The next part of that is to come in with the phase 2A, which would be a detailed development plan is what we call it in land use. So they'll be coming back to the commission with the detailed land use application for the apartments, the parking lot, and et cetera. The developer shall have approved the partial tax exemption pursuant to section 7.1. So that's dealing with the vertical housing tax abatement program. They have the application that they are preparing and to submit. The developer shall have provided to the commission a form of mortgage loan commitment, providing funding sufficient for the construction financing and permanent financing, a loan commitment of both phase 2A and the infrastructure work, and the commission shall have approved the loan commitment. So the developer submitted a letter from Bracadia, the financing lender, dated October 24, 2018, indicating that Bracadia has completed their initial loan analysis for the construction of the Cove Apartments in Oregon City and has recommended $63.9 million loan for both the construction and permanent financing of the project. The developer is working to provide a loan commitment, which will be reviewed by staff and then brought to the URC for consideration. The loan commitment will be provided by Bracadia as the lender and will identify the conditions that must be met by the developer for the loan to be funded. So just like we have preconditions on our development agreement, there are preconditions for Bracadia, and they're also working through the housing urban development, which has preconditions and a time process to get through with HUD. 3.2.9, the developer shall have demonstrated to the commission, in the commission's commercially reasonable judgment, the developer has adequate cash equity committed to the proposal as required by the loan commitment sufficient to finance the completion of the project. So this kind of goes with the one above that, 3.2.8, as it relates to the loan commitment. So they'll be demonstrating to Bracadia as well as to the commission that they have sufficient cash equity committed to this project. The 270-day precondition timeline for the approval of DDA on November 26 of 18 is August 23, 2019. The developer and the staff have made significant progress in meeting the preconditions that outlined in the agreement. Staff is recommending that Section 3.1 of the DDA be amended to allow an additional 180 days to complete the preconditions, which would be a total of 450 days from the effective date of the DDA. The new date for the precondition to be satisfied would be February 19th, 2020. At our last meeting, we had some discussion about the payment, the investment by the district, into the project. That investment is $695,000, and it shall occur no later than 360 days after the effective date, so that November 26, 2018 date. In the event the developer does not purchase the Phase 2A private parcels pursuant to Section 4.41, developer shall deliver to the commission the entire work product described and deliver a bill of sale for ownership of such work product. At the request of the commission, the developer has agreed to amend Section 7.2 to include the following language. As of the date of this amendment, August 21, 2019, no additional urban renewal investment of the $695,000 identified in this section shall be made to the developer until all of the preconditions identified in Section 3.2, so those last four, have been met or waived, and as described above, such payment shall occur no later than 360 days after the effective date, November 26, 2018. To date, the developer has been reimbursed for $367,000 of eligible expenditures. The disposition and development agreement number 1, which would amend Section 3.1 of the DDA to allow a total of 450 days for completion or waiver of the preconditions from the effective date of the DDA, and the amendment to Section 7.2 to require all the preconditions be met prior to any additional reimbursement are included in Attachment 1. There are no other amendments to the DDA proposed. So we've included the proposed amendment number 1, including those two changes to Section 3.1 and Section 7.2, and then the original DDA is included. One thing in conversations since the staff report was written last week, there was, the developer just asked that the commission consider that once they bring the detailed development plan for Phase 2A and the commission approves that for submittal, to go through the land use process, if at that point they would consider making the planning fees that are applicable to that application reimbursable. That was one change since last week when I sent this to you. The other thing I'd like to update the commission on, Section 10 of the DDA deals with the acquisition of additional commission property, and that was specifically Lot 1 and Tract A. And there were 3 preconditions that had to be met before we would sell those properties. Those 3 preconditions were met, and we sold the property, both of them. In Section 10, it says, in the event developer acquires either Lot 1 or Tract A, the deed conveying either to the developer shall contain provisions for a reversion of title to the commission in the event of any termination of this agreement, or in the event developer fails to commence construction on the land covered by the deed within 6 years of the date of the deed. So when we recorded that, I made an error. I got the reversionary clause as it relates to the commencement must happen within 6 years. I did not get on the deed the reversion of title to the commission in the event of any termination of this agreement. So I spoke with Mr. Janik as well as Mr. Mooney. Mr. Mooney has already agreed in writing to the new language to put onto the deed. So we have the language written, we're gonna file a revised deed so that the new deed will say exactly what it says in the DDA. As a fallback, if he weren't to cooperate, worst case scenario, we would rely on the DDA if this agreement were terminated to get that property back. So with that, I am happy to try and answer any questions you may have.
Couple additional points of information that I don't think we covered. Considering we're approaching the due date within a couple days, if this commission leaned toward termination, would you discuss how that is accomplished and the 20-day grace period and those things?
Sure. Let me grab.
And I don't know if we need the exact language,
Okay,
Tony.
okay, I can just explain it. So if we get to August 23rd and all of the preconditions are not met, the commission could direct staff to write a letter terminating the agreement. The developer would then have 20 days to meet the preconditions, the outstanding preconditions. So the letter is what starts the termination of the agreement, not necessarily passing August 23rd. So it's not on August 23rd, this agreement is null and void. There's another step that has to happen in order to terminate the agreement.
Are there questions from my fellow commissioners or comments?
I'd like to know what staff recommends here.
I had recommended approval of the two changes to the timing to include the additional 180 days.
And what is your reasoning or thinking behind that?
Well, one is originally why they submitted the general land use application was that they had hoped to get into the ground this spring, early summer, to do all the mass grading of the site. Because it has to happen at once. We're going across multiple properties, both phase 2A, 2B, where the esplanade is going to be. So the grading is not site specific. So they were hoping to mobilize, do the grading, and then while they were doing the grading, coming in and doing the detailed development plan for the actual building on phase 2A. Once they started working through the costs associated with mobilizing, doing the grading, shutting it down, and then remobilizing, as well as while you're in there grading, there's going to be retaining walls, there's going to be infrastructure that needs to be provided. So it really, from an economic standpoint, didn't make sense to mobilize twice, nor get in there and be in a section where you were grading and then have to come back later, dig that up to put in, whether it's their stormwater, their parking lot, any of the utilities that have to come, the water mains. So it just made more sense to do the mass grading and then roll right into the apartments with both of those approved and moving forward. The other component that's a little bit out of both our control, the developer's control, is obviously meeting our preconditions, meeting Bracadia's preconditions, which they're in a very good spot on, but meeting HUD's preconditions as well. And the HUD timeline is long. And so, I see them making an effort, a good faith effort to meet the preconditions of not only the Urban Renewal Commission that's identified in the DDA, but also they have the Bracadia financing lined up for the $63 million, but then also meeting those HUD requirements and those preconditions to get through the federal government process. And then I also, we incorporated the recommendation from the commission. I can certainly see where if this agreement falls apart, where we own the product. The land use fees, I don't have a specific number for you. It's probably, I know I don't want to guess, but it's less than $100,000 in those land use fees, and at that point, it will have been brought to the commission. The commission will approve it to have been submitted to planning. I could certainly justify reimbursing on that, but really that's up to you. You made the request that there be no additional expenditures until all of the preconditions were met.
I'll make a
Tony?
note.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, Mike.
Those planning fees and reimbursement, that would be a portion of the 695, whatever thousand it was, that we already agreed to, and not an additional reimbursement over and above that, correct?
That is correct.
So I would comment on a number of things. I find it troublesome that 8 months down the road, they have not secured a loan commitment nor demonstrated adequate cash equity. I understand the position on determination. I'm thankful to Commissioner Lyle Smith for her verbiage on no additional urban renewal dollars. I thought that was quite excellent. I see another concession being requested on the waiver of these fees, and I don't want to review the history of the project tonight, but my sense is the initial product that we were guaranteed has evolved into something maybe quite less as a final product. So I wish that the applicant were here tonight because I'd like to have an exchange with them. I feel jumping from 270 to 450 days is quite extreme, and I don't know if there's any number in between that would give them adequate time to accomplish that without dragging it on for another 6 months. Those are my comments.
I did ask about reducing the timing. I think that there's just a concern of trying to get through the HUD process with a shorter timeline.
And I'd be sympathetic to that, Mr. Conkle, except I'm 8 months down the road.
Understood.
Commissioner Smith.
There is a number that's in between that, and it's 20 days.
From written notice. Yes, there is.
So they definitely have another option. And I guess I'm not opposed to letting them use that 20 days. But my point from last meeting, when I voted against the 3 preconditions, was there was no representative from the Cove at the last meeting. Our city manager made reference to a response from David Mooney saying he can't change his schedule to be here tonight. Did we reach out to them, or did that email just come on its own? You would let them know we were gonna bring this, it was on the agenda, and so that email came in response to that?
I reached out, I think we did this last Tuesday when we had the discussion at the work session, and I reached out on Wednesday.
The reason that bothers me is there's been numerous meetings where we have gotten near the deadline on the Cove development, where this room was filled with upwards of 10 different representatives for the Cove that flew in for meetings. Impressive amount of group of people at previous meetings. Not one showed up last meeting, a week within the 270 days. Not one shows up tonight. So it's not like David Mooney had to be here himself. He could have sent anybody, absolutely anyone.
Agreed.
This is continually playing games with us because they assume that we're just going to keep changing it. We're going to keep moving it forward. I've said this so many times. I highly recommend we don't move forward with changing the DDA and allowing for the extension of time. I hope that what we do is give them exactly what we told them we were going to do, which is the 270 days and then 20 days additional. And if they can't do it, they can't do it. I asked the city manager the question before the meeting whether or not we have actually paid, meaning the Urban Renewal Commission has actually paid the city of Oregon City back based on the budget, which we were going to pay back. Urban Renewal is going to pay back the city for the 3 years. I haven't got an answer yet. My point being is that if we have not paid back the city, then I believe this is a vote for the city commission and not the Urban Renewal Commission. Because the Urban Renewal Commission hasn't spent a dime and is not really involved in this project if they haven't paid it back.
So Finance was able to put this together in the last 20 minutes. They've approved $514,008 for the previous year's expenses to be reimbursed. The additional $220,000 will be done annually over the next 2 years for a total of $440,000 to be sent in monthly amounts as expenses incurred.
So we haven't paid it back.
What was the nature of those expenses? Because I know we have an administrative thing we want to pursue, but that's not this. Or that is this.
This was, so the previous budget cycle,
2 years.
we didn't have any expenditures for staff costs, attorney's fees, paid for from the district. We paid it from the general fund. And when we approved the Urban Renewal Commission budget, there was a reimbursement for those fees for those 3 years back to the general fund. So that's the payment that we're discussing that was referenced.
So we've paid back relatively half.
We've approved, Finance has approved the $514,008 to be transferred.
The question
I do
is-
not know if it's actually been transferred yet, but it's been
I think that's
approved.
an important thing. I mean, just because we approve it doesn't mean we paid it back. And so if we're making a vote on this meeting tonight, I think that's a crucial question.
Well, I think that's being a little, I don't know. The fact is that when we approve stuff, finance carries it out. I've never seen an instance where, finance is doing something that the city didn't approve or hasn't done things that the city has approved. So it seems to me, just like our budget, we don't spend it all in the first month. It goes over 2 years, and it's the same kind of process.
Comments or questions from other commissioners present?
I had a question, Chair O'Donnell. I've reread the DDA, and I'm kind of wondering why on the second page, on the third line, it talks about, in order to achieve the public benefits from the project. And I just want to be clear again what the public benefits are to the project. Because I understand we're not getting some of the amenities that I remember from way back when that I thought we were getting.
Right. So we're taking a blighted property that is in the floodplain. We're creating a new shoreline along the cove that will be replanted. There'll be the construction of the esplanade. There'll be a reconstruction of Agnes Avenue in a new location from its current location, tying into the roundabout. And there'll be trailhead parking.
And don't forget the mitigation of the lagoon.
That's dependent on future funding.
Right.
Yes.
And which elements of the initial project have been removed? Specifically, the park?
The North Park. Right.
And is the park and amphitheater one and the same?
Yes.
Okay. But they forewent SDCs that they had, did they not? Because were not providing that.
Correct. So part of that would have been a reimbursement
Right.
because on the assistant development charges. So now the assistant development charges will be applicable. There will be some offset, I think, up for the esplanade, but a lot of that was associated with that North Park that was proposed.
So all that conversation being said, tonight's question still remains, do we grant an extension? Do we say, send a letter and kick in the 20-day period? Or do we propose a different time period to take back to them and say, we're willing to do something in between, but not an additional 180 days? Would that be a summary of our choices?
Correct.
Okay.
And then the request about the planning fees.
Mayor?
So we've been down this road quite a while. And it seems to me that, giving up that one park parcel is not worth, throwing out the whole project, because of that. If anybody, I've worked in the federal government for 4 years in the military. If anybody questions why anything takes so long, it's because it just takes so long. I'm sure Rachel can attest to that even in state government. You can't make anything move it faster than it can. And it seems to me that with all the work they've done and all the work that we've done, it would be, penny wise and pound foolish at this point to cut them off. If we go down the 6 more months and they aren't ready, then I think I would be willing to have that discussion. But as far as tonight is concerned, I think this is too big a project for Oregon City. Adding some more residents in downtown that we haven't had before. Certainly the apartment complex across the street is beautiful and is good for our community. And so adding this, I think, again, is just more revitalization of downtown.
And I guess I would again restate that the troublesome part of this, of the 4 conditions that have not been met yet, are the fact that they have not secured the loan commitment, nor have they demonstrated adequate cash equity. And I just say that because I feel like if I was about to try to buy a major piece of real estate or a home, those pieces would be in place as fast as I could get them in place. And they certainly would be in place if I had to worry about a bump clause, somebody bumping me out, but that's not the situation here. So those are my 2 main concerns, and I agree with Commissioner Smith. David Mooney is not a sole proprietorship, he's a corporation, other representatives could have been here. So I don't want to wander too far from the question at hand tonight. And
Is there yet another option?
if you have one, please
Well,
speak.
there's also I would ask the manager what would happen if we postpone this for 2 weeks. Is that an option?
And what would our direction be to Mr. Mooney and Associates within that 2 weeks?
Be here or be square?
Is there an answer to that question, sir?
I don't know how to answer that without talking with Mr. Mooney about his availability.
No, not that. So if we postpone this another 2 weeks, because of what you stated about the 20-day rule, we don't even start that 20 days until the commission should say we're starting the 20 days, right?
Written notice is given.
Right. So it doesn't really put them in any heartache, and it gives them time, whether it's David or Colin or whoever else it might be from there, to come down here and be here to answer those questions. Because I think part of Mr. O'Donnell's issue is the fact that you can't secure the financing with Mercata until you've gotten, through the HUD process. And so it's just, it's a chain of events that just hasn't fallen into place yet.
I get that.
But I'd love
8
to have,
months.
I agree with Commissioner McGriff. I think, we could take 2 weeks, as long as the Urban Renewal Commission doesn't make a decision to send that letter to start the 20-day clock. They really they shouldn't have any issue with that.
But can we do an amendment and a time extension to a agreement that has technically expired? Or does it not have an expiration? I thought it had an expiration, or we needed to do this by tonight.
Well,
How about if we do this? How about if we just vote to extend the agreement for 2 more weeks, past or for however much time it takes to get past that and give them a chance to come and talk to us.
Is that legally feasible, or are we asking a legal opinion?
I believe that you can extend, you could pick a date, an additional number of days. I'm speaking without being able to confirm anyone's calendar. So,
Well, following up the mayor's chain of thought, if we say you need to be present, have this discussion with us in 2 weeks. If we don't hear from you in 2 weeks, our intent is to, whatever our intent may be, we could issue the written deal, or we could, and ask them if they would consider any other time period other than 180 days.
and I guess
That's a lengthy time period.
all right, and, I think the other component of this is and I do need to go check this in terms of, I think in order to amend the agreement, both parties need to agree.
Which is why I say that we're the ones that starts that clock, not the other way around.
Right.
So,
They technically could as well.
well, yeah, but, and if they're really, and they've spent a lot of money so far to get the project to where it is, between architecturals and engineering and all that other kind of stuff, it would seem to me that they would be, unlikely that they would not show up, given the investment they've already got into the property.
Well, they didn't show up last week.
I'm not
And
sure
they
they
didn't
were-
show up this week.
I'm not
I
sure
did
they
not
were
ask him
notified
to-
about
I did
the
not
work
ask him
session.
to come to the work session.
Yeah.
Well, they knew what the deadline was, which is this week.
Well, the point is, we can't have a two-way conversation when only one of the parties is present.
Well, I'll get the ball rolling by making a motion that we extend the date of the contract to September the 5th, even though our meeting will be on the 4th, 2019, and that we table this for 2 weeks.
Second.
Motion on the floor. Call for a vote.
Commissioner Mike Mitchell. Commissioner Rachel Lau Smith.
No.
Commissioner Dan Holliday.
Aye.
Commissioner Steve Van Haverbeek.
Aye.
Commissioner Rocky Smith.
No?
Commissioner Denise McGriff.
Aye.
And Chair Frank O'Donnell.
No.
Motion carries.
Can I just make a comment?
I'd like to make a comment as well.
Chair recognizes Commissioner Lyle Smith.
So the reason that I cast a no vote is I think we should extend a reasonable amount of time, having them meet on top of a Labor Day holiday and come in here. I mean, I know that, they're a business and all of that, but they're people and they have families and they plan holidays. And to me, I think that timeline's unreasonable. And so I just wanted to put that out there. It's the only reason I
So
said
that-
no.
For the vote.
So what would you have felt would be a reasonable timeline that would be fair to all parties?
Well, I think we need to give
Should've made
our
it
city
friendly.
manager a chance to try to arrange, call them, find out, we have set meeting schedules, find out if they can attend, which one they can attend in the next, at our September meetings, tell them they must be here at a September meeting, and, otherwise, so whatever that is, 30,
Yeah, I mean, just
30
giving me a
days.
little bit of flexibility.
I just feel like we're not giving them any flexibility.
Okay.
And,
Well, I think,
as a
given that the
point-
motion is passed,
Can we?
if there's a concern, the manager can always bring it back to us and say, hey, can only come to the second meeting in September, or we could have a special or renewal meet, either way.
Okay.
You could have made a friendly amendment to a longer date.
Can we still do that? Can we amend the motion that's passed?
Sure.
We can reopen it, as long as the first and second agree.
Does anybody want to do that?
I just want to hear what you're talking about extending it to. You want to say the 18th of September?
I don't have a calendar
be
in
the
front of me.
It's the next,
second-
the
the
second,
second
it's the
Wednesday.
third Wednesday of the month.
I wouldn't want to go past that, and they need to be
Yeah,
present or
by
else.
the second meeting that we have, and, yeah.
So September 19th would be the Thursday
I
after
just
our
gave,
meeting
I
on the
just gave an
Wednesday.
extra day because I thought that was reasonable. I was looking at my calendar.
Do we want to amend the previous motion to that date?
Does the
How do
maker
you
agree?
feel about that?
Yes.
I'm asking Dan.
I'm fine,
You're fine with that?
yeah.
Okay, well, I would ask to have this motion reopened and extend the time to September the 18th.
Second.
We have an amended motion. Call for the vote.
Commissioner Mike Mitchell.
Aye.
Commissioner Rachel Lau Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Dan Holliday.
Aye.
Commissioner Steve Van Haverbeek.
Aye.
Commissioner Rocky Smith.
No?
Commissioner Denise McGriff.
Aye.
Chair Frank O'Donnell.
Aye. And I hope we have a conversation before that consider other alternatives other than 180 days.
Or at least a detailed explanation why the 180 days is necessary.
Also, it'd be nice to see what the pictures are of what they're currently proposing. If they have some sort of a drawing. I mean, I'm interested in seeing what the Esplanade is because I had an expectation we were going to have something else. And so an Esplanade brings a certain design in my mind. So I just want to make sure that it matches up with what they think it is.
Chair O'Donnell?
Yes, Mr. Mitchell.
I'd like to request that when it comes time, whatever the form of our next motion at our next meeting, that matter of reimbursing the planning fees be voted on as a separate matter, because at least for me, I've got a different opinion on one than I do on the other.
I would concur with that.
So noted.
That it?
I believe that's our business at hand tonight. Anybody have any closing comments?
Commissioner Smith, do you have something?
I'm good.
Okay.
Meeting adjourned.